I am Justin Boyd.
And I'm all about the Lawrence slander today.
Tristan Jones.
And we are the Watchers in the Basement. Welcome to the Watchers in the Basement. Welcome to Watchers Football Weekly, a podcast within a podcast, and a podcast that's all about the pigskin. Today we are here to discuss week 3 of the NFL season. Let's get right to it. There are 5 teams remaining that are undefeated. Those teams are the Vikings, the Steelers, the Seahawks, the Chiefs, and the Bills. Frank, I want to start with you, but let's power ranking style, BCS. Let's go back in time, BCS style. Which one of these 5 undefeated teams do you think is the best team? Not the team you think is going to win the Super Bowl, but the team like right now, based on what they've accomplished through 3 weeks of the NFL season. Which of those 5 teams is the best team in the NFL?
Okay, are we talking about playing the best or like
really whatever your criteria is? Because like I said, it's Vikings, Steelers, Seahawks, Chiefs, and Bills. Who's been the most impressive, I guess, is maybe an easier way to say it.
I would say most impressive and playing the best right now, I would say Pittsburgh. Largely because of the Justin Fields reclamation project that's going on in Pittsburgh right now.
Yeah.
I think he had his first turnover Sunday.
He has 1 through 3 games. Yeah.
1 through 3 games, yeah. And their defense they're allowing 8 points a game. like they're allowing 8 points a game through the first 3 weeks. You combine that with Justin Fields playing virtually turnover-free football. Tomlin has righted the ship so far. I mean, a lot of prognosticators, including myself, said that Pittsburgh will probably have the first below 500 season this year, and they've counted me wrong thus far. Now, the schedule eventually they'll have to play the Bengals and the Ravens and the division, but right now I'll say Pittsburgh as of right now is playing the best football.
What do you think, Tristan?
Objectively speaking, the Kansas City Chiefs have been the best team. They played the Baltimore Ravens, they played the Cincinnati Bengals, and they played the Atlanta Falcons. Now, the weaker of those 3 are the Falcons. They've held them all under, I want to say, 23 points, if I'm not mistaken. The defense has been outstanding. The offense, for all what's wrong with Patrick Mahomes, they're 7th in points through 3 games, including 2nd in the AFC. I mean, I don't know what else. They won close games, but they played 2 teams who are at least projected to be good to really good, if not really, really good. And a team that a lot of people think is going to be in the playoffs in the NFC and the Falcons. They've moved the ball. They moved the ball really well against the Baltimore Ravens in the first game. They moved the ball solid. They were solid and getting the ball down the field against Cincinnati. Some stall drives, some couple really bad, Mahomes interceptions. And they moved the ball. Honestly, outside of one drive, I want to say they only had one drive Sunday night to where they didn't get into the Falcons' territory. So, if it wasn't for some penalties, the one Mahomes interception that stalled the first drive in which they moved the ball down the field at will against the Falcons, they probably scored 30 points Sunday night in week 3. So, yeah, I have no reason. I mean, Buffalo's looked very great.
Yeah,
they've looked great. They've also, the schedule has been light, to say the least. But they've looked how you should look when you play a light schedule. So I wouldn't quibble too much if somebody said, "Hey, Buffalo looks like the best team," on eye test. But there's just a lot of context there that I think that's missing. I think Kansas City has been the best team through 3 games.
Okay, I'm going with Minnesota because I thought they were going to be the last in their division. That's what I predicted. They were going to be 4th place in the NFC North. They're 3-0, and their last 2 games they've hosted San Francisco and they've hosted the Texans. Both teams that I still think are probably better than the Vikings. They beat both those teams pretty handily. So I've got to give the Vikings their credit. Their quarterback is Sam Darnold, and he's been great this season so far. So obviously this, we're gonna update this every week, but right now, I think the Vikings, like I said, if you go back and use like the BCS style schedule, or like the power, use the power rankings kind of deal, I think they, to me, are probably the best team just by what we've seen. Their defense is pretty solid. Of course, 2 of those 3 games have been at home. They're usually a good home team regardless of the talent on the field. But like what I'm seeing from Minnesota, I'm very surprised what I'm seeing because besides Justin Jefferson, there's not a ton of guys on that team that I probably could have named before the season started. So, as far as like the other undefeated teams that we didn't kind of mention, do you think there's a fraud in there? Like, do we believe the Seahawks are going to win that division? They're 3-0. They've kind of played a light schedule, but Frank, what do you think about Seattle?
I'm concerned about Geno Smith, and when I say I'm concerned, I'm like holding my breath of like the string of bad football he's shown in the past, whether it's in October, whether it's when it gets cold. I'm concerned about the potential turnover machine that he can be. They've played Denver, they've played Miami without Tua, and they've played New England. So they play a pretty soft schedule thus far.
Yeah.
Smith and Jigba is coming on. He looks like the number 2 now behind Metcalf. Just going off the history of Geno Smith, I'm just really concerned about like the string of turnovers he is prone to have in any given season that he plays in. So I need to see more of him playing mistake-free football and taking care of the football and not putting it in harm's way. He's had a fumbling issue in the past with ball security. So if he can eliminate turnovers or keep it at a minimal, then yeah, they'll be around in the West. But I still have San Fran, coming through. If I think we talked about this last week, if San Fran plays 500 football, they go 4-3 over the next 7 weeks, and McCaffrey comes back towards the end of that, I still have them as the division winner.
And for me, with Pittsburgh, I've liked what I've seen. The defense has been excellent. Defense is in contention with being the best unit in football so far through 3 games. At some point, Justin Fields is going to get tested by a defense that can, confuse them, disguise coverages, make them stay in the pocket, make them, make 2-3 reads per possession, per drop back. So I'm interested to see there. But, the defense has been lights out. Justin Fields has been good with what he's been asked to do. That's going to end at some point, especially once they start playing within the division. The teams they see twice, like they're going to mix some things up, right? And Justin Fields, as good as he's been so far, and with the limited responsibility that they placed upon him as far as, passing the ball, he holds the ball, very long, especially when he plays with good defenses. So, like, I'm interested to see how much of that he's cleaned up over the last year, over the offseason. What does it look like when, you play a defense that's, worth the damn. It's going to, like, really make you work hard. So I'm not saying that the Steelers are a pumpkin. I'm not. I said, on our first part, like, hey, if Mike Tomlin can get the team to 500, like, he's a god in my eyes. So, like, and it looks like, they could be on track for that, but they're going to go through some struggles. Their offense is going to go through some deeper struggles as they progress throughout this season. So will the defense be enough to hold up against those struggles?
It does seem like Fields, though, is the guy for going forward. I don't think there's any reason to go away from him. I know Russell Wilson has a little bit of an injury, but I don't think that's I think Fields should stay on the field until he, proves he can't handle being out there because they're winning. They're 3-0, and of course the defense is carrying a lot of the weight, but that's also a surprise team to me is the Steelers. I did not expect them to be this good to start the season.
You might see Russell Wilson in Miami, something like that. Pretty soon.
That's good. Yeah, that could happen. That could happen. Conversely, there's 3 teams that are still winless. Let's talk about those teams just briefly. We have the Titans, the Jaguars. So the AFC South very well represented in the winless column. and the Cincinnati Bengals. So, Frank, which of these three teams, and I think I know the answer, which of these three teams is the most in trouble of the winless?
Oh, definitely the Trevor Lawrence says of Jacksonville. They're done. They're dead. Dougie P might get his walking papers pretty soon over the next couple weeks. If they go 0-5, 1-6, 1-7, I think you better see the interim tag on the next head coach for the time being. And it's not his fault. It's not Dougie P's fault at all. I mean, it's at the end of the day, man, we got to hold these quarterbacks accountable, especially guys who get paid big money. Like you're paid. Not about going to be Pat Mahomes. Not about going to be, the A list of the A list, but you got to be comparable. You got to be at least, masquerade as an above average quarterback. He's not even masquerading as one. He looks below average. I watched Skylar Thompson for 2 quarters against Seattle, and I watched Trevor Lawrence for 3 quarters last night. There wasn't a difference. One makes $53 million more per year than the other. That's a problem. They showed a stat, I think, last week. Daniel Jones and Trevor Lawrence have the same numbers, down to fumbles, like down to turnovers. It's the same. That's a problem. And we talked about this last week too. Like, how should we view Trevor Lawrence? And oftentimes, when a player gets a new contract, that comes with expectations. But I think sometimes it can be mutually exclusive due to the quarterback market. Teams are so afraid of being like out in the wilderness without a quarterback. But I'm at the point now. I think Trevor Lawrence is just another average quarterback with immense talent, but his production output is average. There was a throw off a half quarterback play action to Brian Thomas Jr. It was like a comeback route. He overthrew him like 3 yards in the air, and it fluttered into Damar Hamlin's hands. Like that's a gimme throw in the NFL. There was not a corner within 8 yards around him. You have to make that throw. And if you can't make NFL throws, especially gimme throws, then you're not going to be long for this starting world of quarterbacking. Unfortunately for Jacksonville, they're tied to him for another couple of years. But it's not looking good. Like you can bring another head coach in next year or this year or whatever, or another OC in. But these are things that with Trevor Lawrence that only he can correct. I mean, I know quarterback coaches and OCs are going through some mechanics and going through, certain things that can make him better, but it looks like it's mental with him. I don't know what's going on with him. Maybe some personal matters, but he looks worse. He's looking worse by the week. And oftentimes when that's going on, it means some of his mental is going on with him in between the years.
Yeah, one of my true tests for a quarterback is if your team's down like 10 points, 2 scores, whatever, how confident am I that, you and that offense can come back within a reasonable amount of time? It was 14-3. And I was like, this game is over. Like, I just don't see how they come back. Now, a lot of that isn't on Trevor. I don't think the Jaguars are supremely talented on either side of the ball, but Trevor should uplift the talent that's already there. And he should not essentially play to the level of what the talent level looks like on the Jaguars. And he looks as untalented as the rest of those guys, like in a lot of ways. Frank talked about the interception he threw to Damar Hamlin. I mean, it was just a lot. Like I intently watched him. Like, what is holding him back? And it was missed throws on third downs. It was taking sacks when he shouldn't have. It was obviously the interception, inability to get out of the pocket to extend plays. Like these are the things that we attribute to average quarterbacks. It's like, what is the thing that sets him apart? So yeah, the Jaguars. I just had the schedule up. Hold on. I know they have Houston next week, and if they go in there and into Houston and get their doors blown off, especially with a quarterback who's much younger, who's essentially assumed his spot as like the next up and coming, future MVP candidate, that's going to be really bad. They have Indianapolis. They should win. They should win against. Well, I don't even say they should win. They will probably be favored against Indianapolis. They will probably be favored against Chicago. They will probably be favored against New England. After that, I don't see another game in which they should be favored until December. And that's Tennessee, right? So, and, anything can happen between then. So the Jaguars are in the biggest trouble because it's not even just this season. Like, directionally, like, where's this franchise going? If in year 4, essentially, your big money quarterback looks average, and I don't see like the next part of his development that can take him to like a consistent MVP level quarterback, which is what he should be, being a number 1 pick, the pedigree he came from, the contract he just signed. He's played in the playoffs. He's won a playoff game. It's like, what else are we looking for from you? Like, I can understand the talent not being great, but at some point, regardless of what the talent looks like, you should elevate it at least one level above that. And he's within the same pack as the rest of those guys.
But I would, let me answer this too, because this is a good conversation that we're having about guys not living up to expectations, especially in the quarterback genre of the NFL. We have to start looking at quarterbacks differently now. And when I say we, I'm talking about media, fans, and front office members. Oftentimes we get so afraid of like, well, we did draft this guy high. Well, we put all this draft capital into this person. We have to pay him. And I think the Daniel Jones example, the Trevor Lawrence example, these are 2 examples where cumulatively $90+ million is being wasted on an annual basis of these 2 quarterbacks. And very similar to both quarterbacks, top 5 picks. Both quarterbacks came in with high pedigrees. And both franchises came in with such fear of like, well, of the unknown. Like, if we let this guy go, what is the unknown? We have to put our foot down and say to ourselves, if it's been 4 or 5 seasons and we don't see like a healthy projection of what this kid could be, and we're just going off, well, he is 6'6", well, he did win a national championship, well, he is accurate, or he was accurate, or he shows it. 4 years should be enough to see whether this guy is worth being paid and not just paying somebody to fear. And I think this Daniel Jones and Trevor Lawrence example is a prime example of, well, if somebody's showing who they are, we should start believing it. And we've had the same conversation about Trevor Lawrence since the day he walked into the NFL. We gave him year 1 as a break. Like, okay, yeah, Urban Meyer, all this shit came about Urban Meyer being a terrible person. Not just a terrible coach, but a terrible person. But now you've had 3 years since then, and you still look like you look 3 years ago. We got to start believing what we see and not being afraid of the unknown.
I agree. My one quibble with that is, like, I don't think Daniel Jones had the pedigree. I think he was a look-the-part all-star. Trevor Lawrence is a look-the-part Hall of Famer. Yeah. Like, if you talk about putting a quarterback in a lab and say, hey, it should look like this, Trevor Lawrence is going to be one of the carbon copies that we see. It's the intangibles, that it factor. Like, we just haven't seen it. I totally agree. Like, I think there's going to be a reckoning because we spent so much time putting quarterbacks on a pedestal, and we're seeing now defenses catching up to quarterbacks. We're seeing quarterbacks just not being as good as the status that we give them. Like, every quarterback shouldn't be throwing the ball 40 times a game. We've kind of seen that. Like, offenses have suffered because of that. Like, you're putting essentially, it's like, hey, I have a player who can't shoot threes that well, but I'm going to let them shoot 8 to 9 threes a game because it's more efficient. It's like, is it? Like, it's more efficient when that guy shoots 8, 9 threes a game. That guy should probably take 2 and they should be wide the fuck open. Yeah, I do think there needs to be a reckoning with quarterbacks, and I think that's kind of starting. Like, it's just not that many of them, and that's the thing that has yet to be fixed. But once we get like a more robust kind of pool of quarterbacks to choose from, I think you'll start seeing teams be a little bit more selective on who they give that big money contracts to.
And the look the part Hall of Famer part, I agree with Trevor Lawrence. But who's to say that the Giants didn't view Daniel Jones like that? They gave him the money and didn't even blink an eye. But yet they blinked the eye like a dozen times on Saquon Barkley.
They kind of blink because they can get out of that contract pretty easily.
Next year they can, yeah.
Next year, yeah. But yeah.
I wonder, like, maybe these guys that like Trevor Lawrence and Daniel Jones, maybe their destinies like Sam Darnold. Maybe they're gonna have to bounce around for a little while before they find. I mean, more than likely they never find the spot where they emerge. And I'm not saying Sam Darnold's for sure going to be, an all pro this season, but I do think there is something to be said for quarterbacks finding the right situation and maybe being a backup for during a team where you have some kind of structure, some kind of, where like with the 49ers or something. Like Darnold came from the 49ers. He went there last year. He was under Shanahan. Shanahan's pretty good at taking guys that maybe are limited in some ways and getting the most out of them. Maybe someone like Trevor Lawrence, even though he has all the measurable talent, maybe that's what he needs is to, get with be a backup in San Francisco, or maybe go to Miami and be under Mike McDaniel or something, one of those kind of quarterback guru kind of people. Maybe that's what these guys need to kind of salvage their careers.
It won't be for about 3 years.
That's true. Yeah. Yeah, the money is the big difference in Darnold was he was the number 3 pick, I believe, in the draft he was in, but I mean, it seems like he wasn't with the Jets for very long, right? He like 2 years maybe. I'm trying to think. Cuz he's been with the Panthers and the Niners, and is this like his 4th or 5th stop? I mean, he's only, he was in the 2018 draft, so that wasn't that long ago.
I would say with Trevor,
it was 2 years because in 2020 they drafted Zach Wilson and dumped him.
Yeah,
right.
There you go. Yep. Okay.
I would say with Trevor, before I doom him forever to like backup status, I think what he really needs is an offense to which he is less featured, like an offense that's less dependent on him. So like. Yeah. More screen game, like just more speed on the outsides where, quick throw, get it out quick, more receivers who can, go up and get contested balls when he's not, throwing perfectly, maybe a West Coast offense where he's quick, 3-step drops and getting the ball out of his hands. Like what we've seen now, we have zero evidence that a Trevor Lawrence dominated offense is efficient enough to like be consistently good. So like in any other sport, we would just kind of bring you down a little bit and say, okay, maybe not 35 to 40 dropbacks a game. Maybe we're 25 at most. You know what I'm saying? More running the ball, more quick games, because this is not it. He can't handle that load right now. And the Jags are suffering for it, and they're going to continue to suffer for it.
But here's a problem with that. And in the perfect world, I agree. What you just listed, Tristan, what you just described is what Baker Mayfield is and how the Bucs treated him. Baker Mayfield's on a whole different pay scale. Like he's not making 55. I think he's making like close to 35, 40 a year.
35 exactly. I would say.
Yeah, 35 a year. So that's 20 mil less. Now, if Trevor Lawrence's talent is viewed like that, and it might be his next contract where people start seeing him like, you know what, he's not the 55 per, he's more of the 35 per. I think when teams pay that kind of money, they just expect more. And then like, how do you justify paying a guy like that if you're going to have to like scale back the offense after you already paid him the money that you paid him?
I totally agree. I didn't say it was that plausible, but that's what needs to happen. So like this, how it is now is not going to work for Trevor. It's not going to work for the Jags.
Yeah. So another 0-3 team let's talk about the Bengals. Now, they're traditional, they're slow starters. They have been the last 2-3 years. But last night's game was that was a game that on paper they should have won, losing to the Commanders 38-33. And it was a battle of LSU quarterbacks. And the most recent Heisman Trophy winning quarterback from LSU, he looked pretty damn good. Frank, what's your assessment of the Commanders Bengals game?
I mean, if y'all remember, man, in our debut show, I had the Commanders in the playoffs. I was very high on the Commanders. I had the Commanders. I had the 2024 Commanders making the walk of the 2023 Houston Texans. I think Jaden Daniels is different.
Yeah,
55 starts in college. That can't be that says something. You know, he went through adversity at Arizona State. You know, he was frowned upon. He played in a bad program. He left there. Teammates doubted him. He went there, went to LSU, another 20-something plus starts. Like he's battle tested. And that's what I want my quarterback to be, is battle tested and have just starts under the belt to where you see so many different, scenarios of football. And he has that. And he's just mature, man. Like when you see him play, he doesn't look like he's ever out of it. He doesn't get too high, doesn't get too low. He's very poised. I know that's a word that we use oftentimes, but he's very poised, man. And like he stabilizes that franchise. And a franchise that's been so quarterback starved for the better part of, just Theismann, right? Outside of the year and a half of RG3. I'm just very high on this kid, man. I think that's what they need. People forget how good how great Dan Quinn is as a head coach. I think the 26-3 Super Bowl debacle kind of left a bad taste in a lot of people's mouths regarding Dan Quinn, but Dan Quinn knows defense. Dan Quinn was, the head coach of the number 7th ranked offense in NFL history of the 2016 Atlanta Falcons. He knows football. And I thought with him being there along with Jan Daniels, and they have weapons, man. I mean, Terry, Scary Terry, our receiver, Brian Robinson, Zach Ertz, who brings a veteran presence if he's healthy. I like what they bring. That game wasn't a gimme to me. It wasn't a gimme to me for the standpoint that the Bengals defense, outside of them playing the Chiefs, the Bengals defense, especially secondary, gives up a lot of air yards down the field. And you saw that again last night. And I thought if the game was close going into the fourth quarter, I wouldn't be surprised had the Commanders took it. Only because the Bengals are still working T. Higgins in. They were still working Chase in, even though Chase went off last night. They're too dependent on their receivers and Burrow to carry that offense, to carry that team, and making all the sacrifices they made, letting all those defensive guys go. Jesse Bates in Atlanta, both the safeties are gone. Hubbard is really the only premier player to have on that side of the ball, and you're not going to be able to win too many 35, 38 shootouts every week if you can't get stops in key moments. And the Bengals had 2 third-down stops that they could have had, and they got beat by a rookie. And the blueprint's there, man. I mean, if you attack downfield their corners, the plays are to be made. And I think that I'm not going to hit the panic button just yell at the Bengals. I mean, they have the Panthers coming up next week, which could be a tough game. With Andy Dalton there now. That the Giants, the Browns over the next couple of weeks, along with the Ravens. So if they're 3-4, along with this 7th seed playoff addition we've added, they still have a shot. But they can't take They can't take too much more AFC losses moving forward.
Yeah, I was impressed. I was super impressed with Jaden Daniels. Not even like the big plays, the bomb. Like obviously they were like astonishing. Man, it was just like the third down pickups to where like he stood in the pocket, looked left, looked right, came back left, picked up a first down, 7-8 yards at a time. So like the biggest thing that has impressed me about the Commanders so far is the line. And I think it's one of the biggest difference you see between how Jaden Daniels has looked for the most part and Caleb Williams in Chicago is a lot of us, myself included, overestimated like that offensive line in Chicago. And Caleb Williams, at this point, he has to like reorient himself because he's kind of seeing ghosts. Like he's speeding up quicker. He's just processing things too quick, trying to make decisions too quick. He doesn't feel comfortable in that pocket because he's fighting for his life pretty much every time he drops back. With Jaden, like he had time to like really sit back and view, go through reads, go through progressions, and just make simple plays. And those simple plays make the big plays that he made, like the stuff that shows up on Sports Center, possible. Because Bengals couldn't just throw 7 or 8 at him. A lot of these third downs, the second and third downs, like he really sat back and kind of picked them apart in a lot of ways. Some of it's dink and dunk because, in today's NFL, you have to dink and dunk, right? He also made those midfield plays and, of course, the 56-yarder and then the 27-yarder to seal it last night. So I was completely, really, really impressed. I didn't think it was going to be a gimme game for Cincinnati either. I did have them winning. Burrow, I thought Burrow played great. Offense was great. But like Coop said, like those corners, those corners are going to be a weak spot for them all year. Not having like DJ Reader, somebody who can get pressure without a blitz behind them. And like there's some holes there in their defense that they have to solve. And they still had trouble, keeping Joe Burrow upright in certain points, especially on like some of those key third downs. So the Bengals, I'm not ready to say they're in trouble because I think Burrow is getting better every game. Like you said, working in Higgins, working in Chase still. But that defense is going to force them to like have to put up 25 to 27 a game, for the most part. Can they do that? I don't think they can. Like I really don't think they can. But I said Burrow's played great. You can look at this as just like a 3-game losing streak, which a lot of playoff teams have throughout the course of a year. But man, the AFC is tough, bro. They got to go like essentially 10-4 the rest of the way, just for a wild card. And I'm not seeing it unless that secondary like shores up right very quickly.
Yeah. So while the Bengals are still winless, a couple of teams on Sunday or this week got their first win. Let's talk about some of the notable ones. Let's talk about the Carolina Panthers. Andy Dalton had a game, and maybe Bryce Young really isn't very good at football because Dalton came in, same team, same offense, throws for 300 plus yards, 3 touchdowns, and they rolled over the Raiders. Tristan, you want to start on this one? What did you think about that performance? Because I didn't expect that. I mean, I'm not surprised he played better than Bryce Young, but I mean, they were saying on Sunday that I think like he was the first quarterback this season to throw for 300 yards and 3 TDs in a game. So
now, why I did not expect that. I didn't.
Yeah.
I did expect the offense to look better, and I don't think it's because Andy Dalton is, the elixir to all that ills that the Carolina Panthers. Nor do I think Bryce Young is that bad. I think historically, throughout the NFL, we see teams make a quarterback change and a coaching change. And you look at that first game after, like there's this euphoria. It's like,
Yeah.
You had a party and everything's just going well. The edible just kicked in. You're feeling great. But inevitably there's a come down. And I think Andy Dalton will come all the way crashing back down to earth. I thought Andy Dalton retired 2 years ago, fam. Andy Dalton will not be Andy Dalton will not be putting up 300 yards. I think they're gonna be times where the offense looks good. Yeah. Because he just won't miss a lot of the throws Trevor Lawrence essentially was missing last night. Andy Dalton won't miss some of those, but some of those he will miss. And he definitely won't give you like any of the big playability. So eventually teams will tee off on Andy Dalton because he's old and he is not extending most plays outside of the pocket. So they're going to put pressure on him, and you'll see Andy Dalton turn back into Andy Dalton which is a worse version because he's several years older than the last time we saw Andy Dalton be good. I will say that the defense look better. That might be something that could be sustainable. So if the Panthers offense is not turning the ball over and they're not putting the defense in supreme disadvantageous positions, I think they can stay in some games. Whereas with Bryce Young, you're working with a lot of third and longs. You're taking some sacks that you shouldn't take. There's the bad turnover here and there that puts opposing offenses essentially in prime scoring position. Off the top. If they can limit those things, then they can stay in certain games. But Andy Dalton himself is going to come back down to earth, and I would say very quickly.
Frank, any thoughts on the Panthers and Dalton starting?
Nah, man. I mean, pretty much what T said. I just wonder how much of this was them playing the Raiders before I really just give like my full Andy Dalton support of like this QB change. I don't think the Raiders are going to be that good. I mean, literally the head coach talked about players quitting and making business decisions during that game. So, yeah, let's wait and see. I mean, he's a comfortable backup. He's a veteran. There'll be spots where he's seen a lot of football. He's played a lot of football. He should be comparable, but let's see them play against more apropos playoff type above 500 teams before I make my full and on support of them moving forward with him.
Let's talk about the Ravens. They got a win on Sunday, their first of the year. They decided to give the ball to Derrick Henry. He ran for over 150 yards, 2 touchdowns to beat the Cowboys, but they had a 28-6 lead. Final score 28-25. Cowboys rallied back 19 in the fourth quarter. Frank, should the Ravens feel good about that, or is that? I mean, what do you make of that game? Because that was a weird game Sunday. I'm watching all these games and like, oh, that one's over because Baltimore just pulled ahead, and then suddenly we had kind of a game there. The Cowboys even got an onside kick, the first one this year, I believe, that was successful. What did you think about that game?
I mean, I'm very concerned about the Ravens. I'm so concerned. It's not even funny. I'm very concerned about their lack of focus when they have a lead. They literally blew a lead against the Raiders the week before, and they damn near blew a lead from Sunday. And there's a level of focus that they just don't have when they have a huge lead. I don't know if it's coaching. I don't know if it's players, the mindset, but they gotta be better in that. They're too lax, and you've done nothing to be this lax. You were 0-2 in that game. Like if you don't win that game, you're 0-3. And they got to do a better job of like refocusing that.
Yeah, I totally agree. Something happens to that offense. They get too conservative. And also the defense, really, the reason that game was even close to being close, or they were close to losing it at the end, is because the Ravens defense actually is what failed them. It's complete blown coverages. Boneheaded blown coverages, and then some unlucky stuff. Defender slips, and Dak gets a touchdown off that. But I'm more worried about the Cowboys. Can we talk about the Cowboys? Let's talk about how bad the Cowboys are. I do give credit to Lamar coming through in that last drive, picking up those third downs. Moving the sticks, and stealing that game off. But this was a Cowboys thing. This is the second week in a row that they just gotten gashed, fam, like gashed, in a way that I feel like it's really sustainable for other teams. Like they have like really quick linemen, but they don't really have those bruising dudes that are going to stop the run. Micah Parsons, as great as he is, we need that. We talked about Trevor Lawrence not living up to what he should be. At times, Micah Parsons, at the very least, has looked like one of the best defenders in the league. At other times, he's looked like an undisciplined, unclutch, ineffective DN. Like he just hasn't been good enough, especially be good enough to talk the shit that he talks about his teammates. Like, fam, we can see you, Lamar, on an RPO, peeking your head back in the backfield, trying to jump in and make Superman plays that you are accusing other people of making because you're trying to, get Lamar going down the middle, and Lamar's going right around your ass for a touchdown. That shit happened twice, right? First time, they didn't come away with a touchdown, but they got a first down. Second time, they got a touchdown off that shit. And it was directly because of Michael Parsons. And that's essentially ended up being like the difference in the game. So like the Cowboys I refuse to take the Cowboys seriously. I know I picked them to make the playoffs and I did not want to do it. I feel like a complete bitch because I wanted to take the Commanders. I wanted to. And at the last minute, literally right before the fucking podcast started, I said, nah, I'm going with the fucking Cowboys. They'll win a bunch of home games. And, and like my worst fear is like they don't have enough talent on the defensive end. They don't have a secondary playmaker after CeeDee Lamb. Brandon Cooks, like I remember when Brandon Cooks was really good. Like those days are not there. Like Brandon Cooks will get you one play a game, essentially. Like Dak honestly has been good. You know what I'm saying? Like I don't really have much to throw on Dak's lap. But the thing about Dak is, like I said about Trevor Lawrence just happens to be an extreme version of this. But when the Cowboys got down, what was it, 14-3? I was like, oh, this game is over. Like Dak, if you're playing even, or if the Cowboys have a lead, Dak is an all-pro type quarterback. If the Cowboys are down, especially if they're down 2 scores, I have zero faith that they're coming back to win that game. And that's an indictment of Dak. Again, that's not his fault, but he's not the reason why they're winning these games either. So, man, I don't know what to tell you on the Cowboys, man. I think the Ravens, I think their season is next week. Like whatever you think about the Ravens will be proven correctly or incorrectly, depending on what happens next week against Buffalo. With the Cowboys, I think they're on a very slow march towards mediocrity at best. They're going to have to depend on like a very soft part of their schedule in order to make up for a lot of the losses that they're going to have against even like just regular good teams. I lost all faith in the Cowboys. Whatever faith I had in the Cowboys, I lost it in that first half.
Well, good news for the Cowboys, I guess. They played Thursday Night Football. They played at the Giants, so that should be a win.
And what if the Giants just run down their fucking throats?
They might.
Is that out of the question?
They very well might.
I mean, to be fair, I'm not worried about the Cowboys because I don't think the Cowboys are good to even worry about them in the first place. So I wasn't worried about them at all because I didn't have them in the playoffs. I had the Commanders and Eagles come out of that division going to the playoffs. The Cowboys aren't good, like talent-wise. They are deficient of talent. Like Tristan said, they're light in the ass, like no pause, like in the front seven. They can't get a push in the run game. Like we've seen examples of this over the last 12 months. Like they got like what are the examples of these losses? Green Bay last year in the playoffs got ran down their fucking throat. Yeah. San Fran last year got ran down their fucking throat. Sunday against the Ravens got ran down their fucking throat. Like they can't stop the run to save their life. And then on top of that, they can't run the ball. You're paying Dak all this money to carry the team, but like he's not one of those guys where he can win in spite of a bad running game or win in spite of a bad defense or win in spite of like not having a secondary playmaker. He is a complementary player. And I like Dak. I think Dak's a good player, but when you pay a guy that kind of money and you expect him to be a Mahomes or Allen or a Burrow, you go and you get mad when he falls short. You call him a failure, but he's not a failure. Like he's a 4th round pick who come out the draft was deficient of certain things, such as arm strength and the ability to throw guys open. That's not who he is. And now you put all this money behind him in CD and be like, hey, save us, get us 10 wins. That's not how it works. Like you gotta be able to put a team around them. They're not good. They may win 9 games, 9-8, That's the epitome of average. That is the definition of average. It's like that's if you win 9 games, that's an average season for an average team. I don't. They're not a bad team, but they're not a great team. Like I don't see why people are all upper arms about this team getting their ass ran through on Sunday. This is what they demonstrated over the last year or so.
Would you like to have a conversation about the Cowboys schedule?
Let's do it.
May I interest you in going week to week?
Please.
So obviously, yes, they have the Giants on Thursday. Short week. That I think the Cowboys will win because they just always beat the Giants.
Yeah.
But I also think it's more of a toss-up. Here's where it gets fun. At Pittsburgh, Detroit, bye. At San Fran, at Atlanta, Philly, Texans, Commanders, and then they get the Giants again on Thanksgiving. Mm-hmm. Cincinnati, Carolina, Tampa Bay, Philly, Washington. I count. There's the 2 Giants games and potentially, obviously Carolina and potentially Atlanta as games where I would favor the Cowboys.
Atlanta, they have a John Robinson. They can run the ball.
I would maybe. Okay. Atlanta, like I say, potentially. Like I'm not. That's a 50-50 game to me. I don't think the Cowboys can get to. Can the Cowboys get to Kirk Cousins? Essentially, that's what it's going to come down to. Mm-hmm. But yeah, man, like 9-8 might be optimistic, especially if they just get on a bad run, like a losing streak. Like that team could implode.
Yeah, no, very, very fair. And after you mentioned the schedule, yeah, I didn't hear a lot of wins when you were listing those teams. So we'll see how that goes for the Cowboys. The final game from Sunday, I want to kind of mention that from where a team got their first win was the Rams over the 49ers. The Rams came back from a 10-point deficit to knock off the Niners 27-24. Frank, you have any thoughts on this game? I mean, obviously the Niners had a big game from Jawan Jennings, who had 3 touchdowns, 11 catches, 176 yards. He looks like their number 1 receiver. I've said that for a while now, like going back to last season, like every time there's a big third down, they seem to go his way. So, but despite his big game, the Rams without Puka Nacua and without Cooper Kupp pull off the win.
Yeah, this is not we didn't have Kittle and Debo type of loss. This is
McCaffrey.
McCaffrey. We just didn't finish the game. Like they missed a field goal in the 4th quarter. That would have put them up a couple scores. And they got lax on defense. They got really lax on defense, and they didn't close. They didn't shut the door. They have concerns when it comes to finishing games as well. And I don't know if it's Shanahan's play calling. I don't know if it's just the game management in general. But you shouldn't lose to a team that doesn't have the 2 best receivers. You should, and like you had a 14-point lead. That game. When you're up by 2 scores with the running style that they possess, you should be able to run down and run downhill on them with Jordan Mason and that stable of running backs that they have. I think they may be putting too much on Purdy right now. Like I get it. There's this conversation amongst the masses about what he is and like should he be one of those guys that we just lay all the responsibility on his shoulders. But you have a system within Purdy plays and that you need to rely on. And the zone running scheme, I feel like should be more. The zone running scheme / play action system should be more implemented to help Purdy out, especially where your weapons are out. But no, that's a bad loss. You can't lose that game, especially being up 2 scores early on and the breakdowns they had in that 4th quarter.
So I think this is a case of like 2 things could be true. I thought Brock Purdy played really well. Really, really, really well. I also agree with Coop that they're putting a little bit too much on him for the simple reason that defense is not good. It has not been good. So like you might need to think about controlling more possessions. The Rams, they didn't run it great against the 49ers, but they ran it well enough to like control, possessions, pick up first down, so on and so forth. And Stafford played really well, despite, missing top receivers. Like, I think I talked about it, in our preview pod. Like, Stafford has been an underachiever for the majority of his Detroit career. Since he's been in LA, he's been his best version of himself, and he's actually gotten better. So I give him a lot of credit. But yeah, man, like the 49ers defense, which is ironic because we've never said this about them, the defense is not good enough for them to be pass happy on the other side. You need to like control more possession, control more clock. That would have helped you not, the Rams not come back to beat you, especially without having like this high powered offense. Like, you limit their possessions, and like that puts more pressure on the Rams to have to score on every possession in order to come back. But Purdy played really well, just not well enough to like keep even a decent offense at bay, if your defense isn't getting stops. So that's what I saw as far as like the closing issues. It was mostly the defense, and I don't think the offense did enough to help to kind of control and manage that game. Even though, despite Purdy playing well, Purdy would have had to get you another 60 or some yards, 5 or 10 more attempts for that offense to be efficient enough to hold a lead against, a good quarterback on the other side.
Yeah. And Frank made a good point. They did miss a field goal in the fourth quarter that would have probably put the game away. It was a makeable field goal. And their kicker, I think they used a 3rd-round pick on that kicker a couple of years ago. So I don't know about that. But speaking of Frank, you were at a game on Sunday. You went to the Saints and Eagles game, a game that didn't have a lot of points, virtually no points until the final quarter, and then it got interesting. What was that game like at the Superdome?
Oh, a lot of shit talking between the Saints and Eagles fan bases. I must say, it's such a stress relief to go to a game and not have a rooting interest. Like, I was really just watching as like somebody in the background, and I was just watching two fan bases go back and forth. That game was like, it was more like a competition of who can make the worst decision, coaching wise, and quarterback wise, from a drive to drive basis. It was 3-0 going into the fourth quarter. In a 2024 NFL world, it was 3-0. I watched Sirianni just make poorest decision after poorest decision. And let me get my soapbox real quick. I have a problem with people not being able to read the room and read what's going on. You could tell after the first quarter that was going to be a game that points was going to be at a premium. You needed to get points however way you could get it. And to watch a coach who did not learn his lesson the week before, with 14 seconds left in the second quarter, go for it on the 18-yard line. What for, bro? Like, you have no timeouts. Like, what was the goal there? To get closer, kick a field goal 2 plays later? Like, your quarterback just threw a red zone interception in the end zone. You're down 3-0. Take the points, bro. Just take the points. What are you doing? You don't get the first down, turnover on downs essentially, and you go for it again in the fourth quarter. Don't get it. It could have been 6-3 going to the fourth quarter. It was just bad decision making by Sirianni. And I tell you what, man, like, that win might have saved his job. That would have been 2 epic bad losses back-to-back weeks. And I the more I watch Sirianni, the more I'm trying to figure out, what does he do? Like, what is your specialty? Like, what do you, when you come home, what do you hang your hat on? Like, what is your identity? I know you go for 4th downs and shit like that. You have that Dan Campbell on you, but outside of that, what is your identity? I don't know what it is. And I feel like, as deficient as that team is on defense, they make a lot of mistakes offensively that they shouldn't be making, largely because of the head coach not knowing the personnel. But no, it was a boring game for the first 3 quarters. I actually got on my phone and was watching other games while I was in the stands, because it was just madly just deficient, poor decision making all throughout those first 3 quarters. The last 6 minutes was exciting, but that was due to just bad decision making that led to the last 6 minutes of it being fun football.
Agree. I mean, that's everything that we said in the preview part. Like, it's like, what do you do here? Like, what exactly do you do here, Nick Sirianni? Besides just being a bad vibes guy, like that. That's his. I think that's his biggest indictment for me. Like, he's just bad vibes. Like, press conferences are shitty. Again, like, there's no rhyme. A lot of the fourth down decisions that he makes, there's no rhyme or reason. It's just like, okay, I flipped the coin and now we're going for fourth down. But in the exact same situation later in the game, you don't go for it. So I don't get what he does. On the flip side, Derek Carr, pumpkin. Derek Carr, man, you look like 2019 Patrick Mahomes over the first two weeks, and then he came back down to earth again against a poor secondary. So it's something to monitor going forward with the Saints. Again, like the Saints, those first 2 wins were mostly about like Alvin Kamara than they were about Derek Carr. Like, Derek Carr got a clean pocket. He had time to just kind of lay waste to secondaries. Obviously, we just talked about the Cowboys and their lack of a pass rush and overrated secondary. The Saints, hey, I think Tampa Bay has looked more solid than them so far. And we'll see what happens at Atlanta. Atlanta's mostly potential at this point, but we got a nice little 3-team race in NFC South that at least will be interesting. Yeah. Like, at least I'm interested to see New Orleans, where it's been a couple years where I just, even with Drew Brees there, I was like, I refuse to watch the Saints unless they're playing a team that I like or find exciting. But yeah, like Coop said, man, like, it was, you could tell in the first quarter, like, hey, this is going to be one of those defensive games where we need to value possessions. We need to, take points when we get it. And at this point, I don't fully trust Philadelphia's quarterback, head coach, or their secondary. So, like, what am I supposed to make of the Philadelphia Eagles? You know what I'm saying? They're another team, I think, like the Cowboys. They have to rely on like the soft parts of their schedule and like really eat against these bad teams, because good teams are going to eat them apart every single time. Like, I don't see how many, over 500 teams that the Philadelphia Eagles will beat this year. Hope it's close. Hope, shorter yardage and push your way to greatness. Outside of that, I'm not seeing it. Saquon has been better. He's exceeded expectations so far. You just got to keep him upright and healthy, because if he's not there, and especially if one of A.J. Brown or Devontae Smith is not playing, that team's not scoring more than 17 points consistently.
They got to be I think the best version of the Eagles is a Saquon-centric offense, where it's everything centered around him, play action, read option, everything has to be centered around him, at least until AJ, and Devontae gets back. Devontae got knocked out of that game with concussion. I'm not sure of his status for this Sunday, but again, it goes back to the vibe of this podcast, talking about the quarterbacks and the expectations. With Jalen Hurts, they're paying that money last offseason, and I feel like they're trying to justify his contract and like not like just taking him for what he is, and trying to like justify his contract and trying to make him this drop back quarterback and throwing 35, 40 times a game is going to cost him. It's going to cost him wins. We need to step away from the negotiation table and what he's making. And like T said, with Trevor Lawrence, kind of dumb it down. I just don't know if these franchises and these front offices are going to allow that because of the money that's being spent on these quarterbacks. And Philadelphia, man, they're one of those few places in the NFL where they move on quick. They don't fuck around. If you're not, if they feel like you're not the guy, Jeffrey Lurie, they have no problem moving ahead and moving past you. Carson Wentz. So, we'll see going forward.
Yeah, talk about moving on quickly. Malik Willis used to be with the Titans. He didn't really get much of a chance. He was with the Packers on Sunday, and he helped beat the Titans, his old team. What'd you, Tristan? What'd you think about that performance, that game? The Packers are 2-1. They're 2-0 with Willis as the starter, as they've kind of configured an offense where they're running the ball a lot, but they're also kind of doing what he does best, and they're finding a way to win.
I mean, that's the formula. I didn't watch a ton of the game because Malik Willis versus Will Levis. Like, why? But from what I watched, again, it's running the ball.
Yep.
I mean, we saw that last week. You know, they just spam the run. You know, 3rd and long, run the ball. You're like, opposite field, run the ball. It didn't matter. I thought Malik Willis extended what he did last week and just making enough throws. And then eventually you can soften up that defense enough. Like, you're going to get some one-on-ones on the outside. And like the touchdown I remember watching came on the outside, one-on-one coverage. It's like, bro, if you can't make this throw, you know, CFL might be in your future. So yeah, they did just enough. Got up on a lead and, you know, forced the Titans to have to throw, and they just teed off on Will Levis. And, you know, Will Levis is a quarterback who should not have played at all during his rookie year. And he played decent enough to make people think, okay, he could be something. And he's at best an average quarterback who can make one really big throw per game to make you think, oh man, if he can do this consistently, like, that's the thing about average quarterbacks. They can't do it consistently. And Will Levis is the poster boy for that.
Really good at turning over the ball, though. I think he has 8 turnovers through 3 games.
It's not even turning the ball over. Like, Josh Allen traditionally, not this year, like, not yet, turns the ball over. Will Levis he makes some of the turnovers that are cartoonish. You know, like, we used to say about like Reggie Bush. Like, Reggie Bush would take some cartoonish hits. You know, RG3 would take some cartoonish hits. Will Levis makes some cartoonish, like, boneheaded throws. Like, how do you even think of that? Like, throwing the ball over your head. Like, how do you even think of some shit like that? So he's unprecedented in his boneheadedness.
Great thoughts on that game?
Yeah, man. I'll tell you what, man. Malik may keep my prediction on course. If the Packers can go 4-2, which is almost likely, like if they keep running the football, safe throws from Malik, they could be a problem in the playoffs, and in due time give Jordan Love more time to stay off that knee. He's played well. I mean, kind of like what you see in Pittsburgh with Justin Fields. They're not putting too much on his plate. Like Tristan said, they're making safe, easy throws, running the football. Like, if you can somewhat stay balanced and keep it simple. I mean, they have the Vikings coming up, the Rams and Cardinals. All those are winnable games. All 3 are winnable games. So if they come out and win 2 of the next 3, by the time Love gets back, they're in the driver's seat. I believe in the NFC North. The Lions, I mean, the other team, the Lions, they look not dysfunctional, but they look like out of sync a little bit. I don't know what they want to be. I mean, they have Montgomery and Gibbs in the backfield. They have all those weapons at receiver, and I feel like they're still trying to figure out what they want to be. The Vikings, we'll see what the Vikings moving forward with Sam Darnold, but I'm reassured with my love for the Packers, man. If Malik can just stay competent, and it seemed like LaFleur it's been a match made in heaven, getting him prepped and like not putting too much on his plate.
You mentioned the Vikings. We have a new person in the chat. Digits is a new subscriber, so welcome, Digits, to the show. We appreciate you. And Digits is a Vikings fan, and that's the last game I wanted to talk about because that was the most surprising game for me of the weekend. You had the 2-0 Texans visiting the 2-0 Vikings, and it was a terrible game. The Vikings just smashed them. I thought these days were over for the Texans, but apparently not. Tristan, what'd you think about that game?
It was really simple. Like, that game, I was pretty locked in on. They made C.J. Stroud's life hell. Yeah. They rushed with 4 and got to him. You know, in 3rd down situations, they blitzed the shit out of him and got to him. They didn't give him any time at all to like process the field. And they made him honestly, they made him look at like they usually blitz a lot of guys on like one side. So he could only look at one side of the field. And then they were just getting to him 4, 5, 6, 7. Like everything was rushed. They sacked him 4 times. They pressured him probably twice that amount. The Texans couldn't get any running game going. It was a master. Brian Flores put on a master class defensively because they just kept that pressure. Even when they got up 3, 4 scores, like they just kept just blitzing the shit out of them and just pressuring and pressuring and pressuring. And like at no point did CJ Stroud look comfortable. At no point. The turnovers he made was just off of just rushing. He's like, oh, I got a little bit of time. Let me try to force this through, because there just weren't enough opportunities for the Texans to like matriculate the ball down the field. So like he was throwing in the double cover, throwing in throws that we don't see CJ Stroud ever make. Like he's a high-end game manager, which is what you want any star quarterback to be. Like he's always going to make the right play, and then when there's a big play to be made, he's going to make it. Right? Like CJ Stroud rarely gets off script, even on the big throws that he's made. Like those are all planned. He'll extend the play, but like he's making a logical, oh, there's a one-on-one on the outside. I got it. One-on-one down the seam. I got it. He doesn't force too many throws in the double coverage, triple coverage. He had no choice on Sunday, because if not, they just weren't going to move the ball. Like there was no run game, to be seen. Texans are already not like a dominant running team. Like they'll have a 100-yard game here and there, but that's not them. Like they use the threat of the pass to open up the run game, and the passing game was not there. So like kudos to Brian Flores. He was the MVP of that game to me, because whatever the Texans tried offensively, they had an answer for, and they just stayed in number 7's face from the opening kickoff until the end, and that was pretty much the game.
Yeah, I mean, everything T said, and then people don't realize Minnesota is a hard place to play at as a road team. It's loud in there. It's indoors. Those fans are crazy. It's one of the more tougher places to play, especially for a second-year quarterback and CJ Stroud. And I mean, the Vikings look good, man. I mean, Hawkinson's not back yet. TJ Hawkinson is one of the better tight ends of football. You get him back with Justin Jefferson, and I like Naylor, the other receiver that they have. He made a lot of plays downfield too. They got weapons, man. That Ty Chandler, Aaron Jones backfield looks really, really good too. It's going to be tough for teams to go in and get wins in that stadium, because it's loud. It's one of those, decimal wise, it's one more tougher place to play. But again, if they can keep the game plan simple for Darnold, balance out running game, and when you play with a lead the way that they played in that game against the Texans, you can pin your ears back defensively and just break all hell breaking loose on the quarterback when you have such a big lead. And I think the Texans just kind of was off kilter the whole time and didn't know how to recover.
Yeah, they just made a great point here. Like the Vikings, they disguise a lot of reasons. You don't normally, again, for CJ Stroud to be a second-year quarterback, we don't normally talk about him struggling to process reads. And Brian Flores just, man, like act like you rushing 6 and just drop back. Like he would just continuously mix up those coverages, and like it just kept, like you said, it kept them off balance. And when all those fails, they would just rush them with 4, and they would get there like pretty much every single time. And like the second MVP of this game, Laramie Tunsil. Hey man, as somebody who used to like watch the Texans every Sunday, and some portion of my happiness depended on the Texans, even though I never could find like a love for the Texans. Man, Laramie Tunsil, I heard his name way too much. And I mean on like one possession, on one fucking drive, I think he had like 3 false starts. It's bad when you see a flag thrown and you automatically 78. I shouldn't know like too many offensive lines numbers. You should know that. like your free safety, you know what I'm saying? Like your nickel corner. I shouldn't know your fucking name. I just shouldn't. You know what I'm saying? Unless I root for you on a week-to-week basis, I should not know your name and be that intently knowledgeable about who you are and your deficiencies. And Laramie Tunsil, that was one of the worst games I've seen from an offensive lineman in a while, since like the 2020 Super Bowl. Like, it was that bad.
Yeah, the only good news for the Texans is they play in the AFC South, so they'll be okay going forward, I think. But that was a tough. It's not that I was surprised they lost, because, as Frank said, going to Minnesota is always tough, regardless of who they have on the field. But man, 34-7, and it wasn't even like that close. It was like they were just dominated the whole game, and it was just, I was like looking, you don't look forward to. I mean, like, obviously with what happened last year with CJ Stroud and D'Amico coming in, turning the team around. But before that, in years past, I never looked forward to any Texans games. They're just one of the 8 or 9 games that are being played at noon on Red Zone. But I was looking forward to that game on Sunday, and it got out of hand real fast. So, is there anything else you want to mention that we didn't touch on? Frank, is there something you want to talk about that we didn't get to?
I've been on Instagram and Twitter a lot the last 4 or 5 days, and there's been a lot of like Jet love, a lot of Aaron Rodgers love, and like we're going to the playoffs. Look what we did to the Patriots. Like, calm down, guys. Calm down. It's the Patriots, bro. Let's wait to see how y'all look against Buffalo and Miami when Tua gets back, and other above 500 teams. Aaron Rodgers looked good. I'm not gonna lie. He looked like a decent quarterback. He let him make throws. He moved around a little bit, but man, the New York media, man, they're just going up in arms about like them being 2-1. I'm like, let's cool out on that for a little bit.
Yeah. For me, two things, well, 3. One, very quick. We don't have to, go deep in this game, but your back-to-back defending champions are 3-0. Let's just start out there. Josh Allen, I think, most would agree, is the front runner for MVP. He's played really well, only turned the ball over once so far through 3 games. You can get that to him for right now. We'll see how the rest of the season shakes out. And, Coop mentioned like the Lions and like what they want to be. What they want to be is a team that protects Jared Goff, because that's literally the line of demarcation over whether they play a good game offensively or not. Can you keep Jared Goff upright? Can you keep guys out of the backfield? Can you give them enough time to just 3 seconds to process the field? If you do that, he'll pick you apart. The Cardinals got to his ass. They sacked him twice. A lot of pressures, a lot of rushing throws. And they just didn't look good. He didn't look good at all, and again, he can't get out the pocket, right? Trevor Lawrence is like half a step above Jared Goff as far as like extending plays. Trevor Lawrence is not a bad scrambler, guy who can like make plays outside the pocket, but he's Lamar Jackson, he is not, even fucking Aaron Rodgers, he is not. So that's literally like, can they protect them? Can they protect them on a possession-to-possession basis, especially late in games? That'll be the difference with the Lions. That's the defense is good enough. Their run game is good enough. They have good receivers on the outside. They have one of the best tight ends in football. How do they lose? Is pressure. Can you pressure the quarterback? That's literally it. But that's it for me on week 3.
Frank, any final thoughts?
Nah, I second all of that. I totally agree.
And, last week we talked about college football, but this week there wasn't a ton that happened in college, I don't think. Is there anything y'all want to mention from college real quick?
Man, James Madison beat the fuck out of North Carolina 70-50, bruh.
That was, I didn't expect that for sure.
I didn't watch that game. I wasn't anywhere to like find it on the airways, but I think I went on ESPN and like it was like 60 to 20 something. I'm like, wait, that has to be a glitch. That can't be right. And I saw in my group chat with Tristan and our homies, I'm like, no, that's right. Like, what the fuck's going on in North Carolina? Like, and they were undefeated going to that game. Like that, I didn't understand that. That was weird.
Yeah, I too thought that the score was wrong. Like I had to check. I'm like, okay, I checked my phone. Like, what the fuck? But, Yahoo Sports will, mess something up or, whatever. And then I saw like a highlight flash across the screen, and not only were they winning, but like they were beating the absolute fuck. Like, I mean, bombs, 40-yard runs. Like, which one is the ACC team and which one is not? That's about all I can remember from this weekend. This was not a banner.
Tennessee knocked off Oklahoma. Or they beat Oklahoma. I don't know that it's really an upset of any sort, but that was probably it. But I believe what is it? Alabama and Georgia play this week? Yeah. So we'll have more to discuss on the college front next week, and then of course in a few weeks we'll have Texas Oklahoma, and then we'll have Texas Georgia. We'll start getting some of the real big matchups. But that about does it for this week. So now you know what we thought about week 3. We want to know what you thought about week 3. The best way to do that is to join us for our live streams. Join us in our chat, just like Tracy Vigilance did, King B. Johnson, Geeking Out with Melly Mel, and our new friend Digits. We appreciate them for joining us. Again, thank you all for being here. And hey, if you're watching us right now and you're not watching us live, you can join us in the comments section. Let us know what you think about the show. Who's your favorite team? Who you rooting for? What do you think about our opinions? All that good stuff. And if you're on YouTube, be sure to like us, like the video, subscribe to the channel. We appreciate that. And you can also find us on social media. We're at Watchers Basement. We're on Facebook, Twitter, Instagram, and Threads. Be sure to use the hashtag Watchers Basement. And for those of you who prefer the audio platforms, we're on there as well. So check us out on Spotify and Apple Podcasts. And if you're listening to us on those platforms, please be sure to give us a 5-star rating. It really helps us out, and we really appreciate it. So that does it for this week. So for Frank and for Tristan, I'm Justin saying thanks for watching. Thanks for listening. We will see you next time. Have a good night. Bye-bye.